earlier video about the Soligor 24mm f2.5. I'll link it in the end screen and also below in the description. I tested this 24mm lens in this FD breech lock mount, and I was still using my Canon 5D Mark IV with the FD EOS adapter that featured an optical lens element to enable infinity focusing. The results I got then on that test was fine, but clearly not as clean as some other lenses from the same era are. It was suggested to me in the comments and also on some forums where I shared the video that the FD EOS adapter, this one over here with that optical element, was not doing the lens favors, and it detracted from the overall image quality usually. Now I couldn't at that time obviously tell if it did or didn't. I decided since then to give the lens another go because I really love the 24mm focal length, and this time using the FDR adapter, which does not have a lens element in there, on my Canon R mirrorless camera. Now let's have a look at some of the images and footage. Now if we move on to stills, lovely image. Colors are actually not as muted as I seem to remember them. A little bit of barrel distortion, which is understandable. It's 24mm, and definitely a bit of vignetting. We'll find, and this is not even wide open. If you go in, you see it comes across as sharp. This is at 100%, but it doesn't render clear, you know, so there seems to be a little red fringing if I look at the bird, and there seems to be just general CLA and aberrational issues. Again, this image, good lighting helps. I mean, in this, the light's a little bit more forgiving here, so immediately there's less fringing, but you can see a little bit of fringing on the mountain. I'll show you now at 100%. You can see again, it seems very sharp, but it's sharpness without good rendering, so there's almost like a lack of clarity in some of the images, even though it comes across as sharp. Which is something you find sometimes with vintage lenses. And as you go up in resolution, that can become more and more pronounced. Another pleasant image, fairly low contrast, but so was the lighting. There you can see this barrel distortion, but since the horizontal lines are more in the middle of the frame, it's not as pronounced as it would be towards the edges, but you can see it in the paving blocks at the bottom in this what do you call it, paving bricks. You can see there's a little bit of curvature. Here we have some very forgiving light, so it's low light, low over the horizon, through some cloud cover, so very soft. This was focused at infinity at f16, so there could very possibly be some, you know, issues with diffraction. You can see towards the edges there by the building, there's definitely a bit of distortion. It's going soft there. A little bit of barrel distortion is visible if you look at the horizon, but generally it seems like a very pleasant image. But again, this is a lens that was manufactured in 1979. Now, if we move a little bit towards the top right of the very same image, we look at the buildings, you can see there's a bit of distortion towards the corners of the image. Again, that well, I wouldn't call that sharp. So there you can definitely see some aberrational issues. Portraits are always exciting to test lenses on, and 24mm even. They can create some very nice portraits. Again, color rendition, colors pop enough. There's reasonable contrast. This is very flattering light. Again, it's soft skylight. But then if we go closer, and I have to take some responsibility maybe for user error, the image is sharp if you look at the face on the right, but then because I was possibly not 100% parallel to the wall and the focus, there's a definite fall off, but this is wide open at f2.5. Now I'll just have a look at some more images. I always have a bit of time for black and white. This is just a straight black and white conversion. I did no burning whatsoever. This lens will be 100% fine. You know, if you want to print up even to A4 size, I think the lens will resolve sharp enough. If you're going to footprint really big, then maybe the lens is not really sharp enough for that. But I think for general use, for landscapes, 24mm, this will be great. Like I said, the barrel distortion pretty obvious in this image. In this scenario, I feared the lens would just go all hazy and messy, and I was actually quite surprised. I mean, I am facing the light source, but I'm very pleased about the lack of haze or glare that you would sometimes get shooting with a wide, cheap lens into the light source when things are backlit. And in this case, it's a very pleasant shot, and it retained color quite remarkably. That might have to do with the sensor as much as the lens, but I have found that lenses, especially when you're shooting into light sources, different lenses handle the color fidelity, if I might say, differently. And in this case, I'm actually very surprised and quite pleased. Now, this image I deliberately underexposed. We could have a look at flare, and you can see those tiny little flare balls, and then 5-sided, almost diamond shape towards the middle of the image. The sun is shining through a thin veil of clouds, and that's why you wouldn't necessarily get your normal type of flare. But again, the flare doesn't seem to go out of control completely. With the previous test, I shot straight into the sun, and the flare was quite hard, but interesting if you check out that video. And so here it's obviously quite a bit more subdued, so I can't think that the different adapter would have so much of an issue on that, but I suppose it is possible. Conclusion. As in the previous video, I'll say this lens still has a vibe. It's definitely quirky, but I have to be honest, I don't find the performance improved drastically. Maybe the lighting conditions are even better now. Although there seems to be a clarity that wasn't there before, maybe that's what people were alluding to. And the overall sharpness seems to be a little bit better, but only incrementally so. I think you can go ahead and use this, if you're not too serious about the final images that you get, that they need to be perfect. The lens is still fun to shoot at 24mm, and if you are willing to deal with a bit of vibe, who says you can't create amazing images with that? Especially if you're shooting monochrome, consider that. I also created a video where you can see how to date the vintage Soligor lens you own and where it might have been manufactured. So I'll link that also in the end screen and below, so that if you have a Soligor lens, you can go and check that out and get some more information on it. Anyways, that is it for this video. If you like it, please like, subscribe, and I'll put a couple of links down below for this lens. Like I said, definitely a vibe, and for specific use cases, this might just be what you are looking for. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.